Clause 9, Amendment 80, Baroness Fox.
I'd like to move the amendment standing in my name. I do it right. Sorry. My Lords, I rise to speak on a range of amendments associated with Clause 9, Amendments 80, 81, 82, 83, 86, 89, 92 and 94. While I have also put my name to Amendments 88 and 90 in the name of Lord Beith, and I also have some sympathy for Amendments 98 and 99 in the name of Lord Farmer and the Lord Bishop of St Albans. Clause 9 creates a new criminal offence of interfering with, quote, a person's decision to access, provide or facilitate the provision of abortion services in a designated buffer zone. The most contentious aspects of the clause centre, I would say, on the definition given to interfering with, which criminalises a wide range of activities usually associated with free speech and the right to assemble. But Clause 9 also makes any gathering outside an abortion or a hospital providing abortion the subject of criminal law. Currently, where there have been problems outside buildings facilitating abortion services, the mechanism for dealing with them has been locally decided and designed through Public Space Protection Orders, PSPOs. Police and local authorities have the ability to set up zones in response to complaints over gatherings around specific abortion-providing facilities. Clause 9, in contrast, introduces a catch-all blanket ban across all service providers, regardless of whether there are problem protest activities taking place. And this seems to me totally disproportionate. So although I am no fan of PSPOs per se, councils carving ever more public space away from public use is not a positive trend, in my opinion. Nonetheless, the aims of my amendments 88, 89 and 90 is to repose the solution in relation to abortion protests as localised PSPOs based on consultation and reviewed annually so as not to normalise prohibitions. Because Clause 9 focuses on the issue of abortion, which we know is an emotional and morally challenging issue, it's worth taking a step back. The government's reasons for bringing forward the bill overall is to deal with the new protest tactics of Extinction Rebellion and its offshoots. Many of us have noted in previous debates that we don't support these antisocial tactics, and some of us have even been clear that we have no sympathy with the nihilistic, catastrophising philosophy behind the eco-guerrilla warfare that activists have been waging against the British public. But despite that, there's been widespread concerns across the House querying whether these new laws are necessary or proportionate, and noting that we already have laws on the statute books to deal with the aggravated disruption, even if these laws are not being used effectively by the police, which is a different problem. There's also been widespread unease, which my Lords have illustrated in myriad ways, about how various clauses in the bill might have unintended draconian consequences for the general right to protest, far beyond just stop oil activists or our attitudes to them. The same concerns are absolutely true, for me, of Clause 9. However, the difference is that many opposing the government on the rest of the bill are supportive of this section of the bill. Seemingly, this is because my Lords want to be unconditionally supportive of every woman's right to be able to access abortion facilities without hassle or hostility. Myself, as a passionate advocate of women's reproductive rights and bodily autonomy, I am very sympathetic to this view. However, this is not the key prism that should inform our approach to Clause 9. I would therefore urge my Lords to scrutinise Clause 9 with similar dispassionate, impartial eyes as we've assessed the rest of the bill in relation to Just Stop Oil. That is, beyond our attitudes to abortion or indeed Just Stop Oil. Indeed, Stella Creasy, the MP who effectively is the author of this clause, was quite right when she said in the other place that this new clause is not about the abortion debate. However, she argues it is about ensuring safe access to abortion healthcare, and this is where the dispute starts. All the evidence indicates that the activity happening outside clinics, while undoubtedly unsavoury, does not threaten safe access. What's more, if there are any instances of women being obstructed in terms of safe access, which in my opinion is totally unacceptable, as Home Office Minister Kit Malthouse pointed out in the Public Bill Committee debate in June, there are many pieces of legislation that already exist to protect women if they face intimidation or harassment. For example, the 1986 Public Order Bill prohibits causing harassment, alarm or distress and includes a specific power to impose conditions on assemblies that seek to intimidate others to not do an act they have a right to do. As with other parts of the bill, the police have the powers to target specific instances of behaviour or activity if they constitute blocking safe access to abortion facilities. In 2018, the then Home Secretary, after concluding an in-depth review of the abortion clinic buffer zone, stated, "I am adamant that where a crime is committed, the police have the powers to act so that people feel protected." And it seems that given the importance of the rights at stake here, it is particularly important that the police use their resources and their existing powers appropriately to protect staff at abortion facilities and service users alike. But to note, for that to happen, none of this requires Clause 9. Don't get me wrong, I have very little sympathy for those who think it's appropriate to gather outside abortion clinics. It's wholly unpleasant, it seems to me, to target any individual woman going into hospital to access a legal termination. Waving gruesome images of dismembered fetuses, following women and medical staff doing their job, calling out "your baby loves you" or "murderers," hanging clothes around clinic entrances. This seems to me to be crass insensitivity rather than compassion. However, to be balanced, pro-life activists who attend these vigils will dispute these anecdotes and claim they are simply offering crisis pregnancy support, giving women choices by offering help financially or in raising a child, etc. There are, I concede, two competing narratives, and I'm conscious of the 2018 Home Office review that found that those gatherings are largely comprised of passive activities such as prayers, leafleting, placards, singing hymns and so on. Regardless of which narrative you buy, in my opinion, it's wholly insensitive and intrusive to try and engage individual women at such a time, effectively demanding they account for their personal moral decisions to strangers at a rally, and I've no doubt that this would upset most women. It would upset me. But whether it's upsetting or not is not what we should be talking about. The key question is, should it be illegal? And does it constitute a threat to safe access? And my problem with Clause 9 is that it doesn't distinguish between activities causing actual, objective harm and harassment that threaten safe access from activities with which we may disagree or we might find disagreeable. Therefore, we must resist the temptation to create a law that criminalises otherwise legal activities based on a distaste for those activities. If you look at how the bill defines the term, for example, interferes with, it really will make an extraordinary range of activities in a particular area punishable by lengthy stints in prison or unlimited fines. Just to mention some of the most egregious and censorious parts that my amendments 88, 89 and 90 seek to strike out, quote, seeks to influence, quote, advises or persuades, quote, attempts to advise or persuade or otherwise expresses opinion, quote, informs or attempts to inform about abortion services by any means, including without limitation, graphic, physical, verbal or written means. In other words, Clause 9 outlaws leafleting, holding placards, expressing opinions, persuading, informing. Some will say, don't worry, This is only to be used in very specific instances of access to abortion, and it is only confined to designated areas. But as Big Brother Watch points out, quote, creating prohibitions on protests on any issue, on an issue-by-issue basis is not an appropriate way to make law. It sets a precedent that will inevitably lead to attempts to prevent speech, expression, information sharing, assembly, or the holding of protected beliefs around other sites or in relation to other controversial or unpopular causes. And my question is, if we pass Clause 9, why won't other institutions demand buffer zones around their special case facilities? And even we consider that the definition of a buffer zone in Clause 9 is defined very broadly as 150 metres from any access point to any building or site that contains an abortion clinic. Doesn't that make protests at hospitals of all sorts potentially unlawful? What if you wanted to organise a vigil outside a hospital in which, for example, babies died due to negligence, such as in the maternity services scandal recently? What about a rally against the use of puberty blockers on teenagers? Would that be banned too? And to note, when Labour introduced an amendment to the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill for fast-track PSPOs to be used against gatherings in the vicinity of vaccination centres, they also made a special case, extended the precedence for another medical procedure to be protected from protest, a veritable slippery slope. To those who say that the slippery slope argument is scaremongering, we were reminded in Liberty's briefing for this bill that protest banning orders were based on, practically word for word, on football banning orders. I remember speaking against football banning orders and warning then that they set a precedent, and I was told, oh no, they're only aimed at football hooligans. Well, guess what? To conclude, I'm very conscious that this clause was voted in with 297 votes for, 110 against in the other place, and was supported by MPs across all parties. And I'm always concerned about the democratic dilemma of challenging what happens in the other place by us here, unelected lords. But these are probing amendments to ask my lords, for example, to at least strengthen the burden of proof required to establish offences, to limit the range of acts potentially criminalised, to bring some proportionality to sentencing, and to try to limit the illiberal, if unintended, consequences of what is undoubtedly a well-intentioned clause. I hope when the bill returns to the Commons, we at least give them a chance to think again. And to finish with Liberty's comments in 2020, which I think are apt, quote, interference with protest rights should be kept to a minimum. Liberty's view is that legislation should only go as far as necessary to enable people to access abortion services safely. That's exactly right. And the problem with Clause 9 is that it's redundant on this basis because the safe access to abortion services are not threatened by people gathering outside.